Hey, y'all, back for book two with the Confessions with St. Augustine. And so this is really when things start to get rolling, get real juicy here with St. Augustine because we've got puberty Augustine. Augustine hits puberty, and he does not consider that obviously a very good thing. A lot of us have probably not fond memories of our pubescent years. And so Augustine's no different than us, right? Um, Real quick, there's a really important theme before we get into teenage Augustine here, which is the idea of disordered love. Augustine, this idea, disordered love, love that is not proper or in the right way, is huge to his thinking. So when he says disordered love, or when he's talking about love, he's talking about I loved the wrong things. Obviously, to Augustine, the to be human is to fully be human is to love God above all else. And what the problem is that we don't love God first, right? So in this first paragraph of book two, near in the middle of the first paragraph, it says, I will try now to give a coherent account of my disintegrated self. For when I turned away from you, the one God, and pursued a multitude of things, I went to pieces. So he's saying essentially, I went my own way. I looked for other things. I went in all sorts of different directions, and all I did was tear myself apart. I loved the wrong things. I went after different things, such as in the last sentence there. I was intent on pleasing myself and winning favor in the eyes of men. What he cared about was others. What he cared about was other people's opinions, and it tore him apart. Did not give him peace and happiness. And in the first sentence here, I think really important, the first sentence of paragraph two, what was it that delighted me? He says, only loving and being loved. And what Augustine is saying is there's that is what it means to be human. Loving, giving your love to someone and being loved. We need that as human beings. We need something or someone to love, and we need to be loved. And obviously what Augustine is saying is that the only way to find perfect love is in loving God and being loved by God, right? And that the problem is we're constantly loving something else or someone else, putting someone else where God is, and trying to be loved by those things, by happiness, by sex, by power, by the praise of others, by money, whatever it is. We're trying to have those things love us, and it's never going to fill us. And we're trying to put our love into those things, which will never fulfill us. So this idea of disordered love is really, really important to Augustine. It's going to be a common theme throughout all these books. Okay. So then we get to Augustine just being like, whew, puberty hit me hard, man. It hit him hard. So it's a sexual awakening, and all the lust and all these feelings rise up in him, which I think most of us are adults here, so we can understand this. Like we're like, yeah, that happens, right? It's this lust that boils up, and it's overwhelming the feelings that you have like as a teenager, right? And even as an adult. And he's like, this lust was overcoming me, and it was absolutely I was powerless to stop it. And so he just dives in head first, right? And you got to understand the Roman culture is not that different than American culture. So it is absolutely, yeah, have partners. In the last book, it even talks about them not baptizing Augustine when he's young because, okay, if we baptize him and he's not going to be able to stop himself from sinning, right? We've all been through puberty. We got to understand that like he's going to mess up. So let's wait to baptize him so that he can get all this sin, all this sex out of the way early, and then maybe later he'll be baptized, right? So it's not discouraged. And look, his dad is like cool with it. His dad's happy when it says he sees Augustine at the bath, right? So he sees him and he's like, oh, Augustine's becoming a man. And I'm excited. Yeah, he's gonna go. Like, and so his dad is like encouraging this, like, he's going to go out, he's going to have all these liaisons, however we want to say it, right, with women. He's going to be promiscuous, and his dad's like, hey, way to go, Augustine, look at you becoming a man, right? So he doesn't really have these safeguards other than his mother, but even his mother is kind of like, oh, it's torn, right? Because it's almost like this desire to sin, this lust is unstoppable without the power of God to be in us. And Augustine's going to talk about that a lot. That um, this was really difficult. Sex and lust was one of the major things that was difficult for Augustine to overcome on his way to becoming a Christian, to following Christ, right? So he's got that going on. And then we have this really long discussion about a pear tree. What the heck? And so I put that over on the confusion. He goes on a really long talk about stealing fruit from this pear tree. And we might think, well, what's the big deal about that? Um, but Augustine's going to do this a lot. He starts talking about something and then he goes in a rabbit hole and starts really digging deep. Why did I do this? Why is it like this? What are these? And I saw these questions. And let's not act like Augustine's weird here. We've all been in TUMI classes, right? And we've all started with one question or one story, and all of a sudden gone 30 minutes down a rabbit trail the other way, talking about something else, and everyone's sharing all these things, right? That's all Augustine's doing. He's like, well, his brain's going from one place to another. But really, the pear tree is a huge part of Augustine's story, and it's symbolic. It means something. So him and his buddies go and steal pears from this tree, and they don't really. What he's talking about is that most sin we do because it gives us pleasure, it gives us something, right? It's we sin to get more power. We have sex to satisfy our lust. We hurt someone. We steal something to get something we want. We go and try and hurt people so that we can have more power, right? So all of these things, he's talking about why people sin. He gets on this bunny trail, this rabbit trail about why are we sinning, and then he thinks about this pear tree instance. He's like, why did I do this? The pears weren't any good. They were kind of like cruddy pears off this cruddy tree, and we stole them and we took them. And he's saying the only reason I sinned was because I liked to sin. What is wrong with me? I sinned because I just like to sin. And then he thinks even more about it, and he gets to the point where he's like, but here's the truth. I wouldn't have done it alone. And isn't that true for a lot of us? Man, I sinned because of the company I was keeping. I was sinning because I didn't want to be left out, right? Loved and being loved. I wanted to be loved by my friends. Part of being loved by my friends was doing the things they were doing. We wanted to do this together, right? So he then talks about how just what a messed up friendship that is, right? What kind of messed up friendships am I in if we are enjoying and loving sinning together? And so, but he says, I wouldn't have done it alone. And I think that's something that we can connect with, that there have been times in our lives that we do things and it's like, man, I wouldn't have done this if I wouldn't have been with this group or with these people, right? So it makes us think about who we're surrounding ourselves with. So that's the story. The book 2 ends with him and his reflections on the pear tree, right? So it's a reflection on why we sin. And so some questions that we can ask ourselves from book 2 is, this idea, only loving and being loved, is that true? What does it mean to you that as a human being, what do I desire? I desire to give my love away, and I desire to be loved. Is that true? Right? And is God the answer to that? Is God the answer to, this is the direction my love needs to go, is towards Christ, and is the only way I'm going to really ever feel satisfied in love by being loved by Christ? Second thing, Augustine talks about his struggle with lust and sex very openly. It's a very big thing for him. And he's going to talk about it throughout the book, right? So, what struggles do we need to be open about to overcome? Because, like, let's be honest, lust and sex is a taboo subject in the church, and we don't like to talk about these problems, but we've got to talk about it, right? He's got to confess it. He's got to talk about, look, you are not alone in this. Like, Augustine is not some holier than thou, up above you, like not feeling any temptations. He is just like the rest of us, and we've got to talk about these things to overcome it. And then finally, as I get my face out of the way, this question: what is the motivation behind my sin? Right. So thinking about, what do I really want when I do this thing? when I'm sinning, whatever that sin is, right? So why am I doing it? What's the motivation behind it? Am I not sharing Christ in this situation because really because I don't want to hurt this person. I don't but really what I don't want is them to not like me. My sin is that I really love praise. I really love other people liking me, and I'm afraid of losing that, right? So what is my sin in my life? Like, what is my where is that motivation coming from, and what role does the camaraderie that Augustine says of sinning with others play in our lives? Right? He said, I loved the camaraderie of the act of stealing the pears. So, do we need to think about who's in our lives and what people we surround ourselves with as we think about our walk with Christ? That's what I got for book 2. Hopefully, you enjoy this section, and I'll see you over at book 3.